Hi there, folks. Welcome to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson from Kansas State University, and I have a special guest here at the Kansas Farm Bureau, Joe Drury from Ingalls, Kansas. And Ingalls is out in the southwest corner of Kansas. And Joe, we've been talking about water, and water's a timely issue.
Yes, it is. Very much so.
Yeah, and out in your part of the country, we're at desperate levels.
We are at desperate levels. Yeah, the Ogallala is declining. Rainfall's been short for the last 4 years, and yeah, we're looking at lots of problems.
So as we look at some of the issues, can you kind of take me back and walk me through a little bit of the history of the aquifer and things to that nature?
You bet. You know, with the onset of the center pivot irrigation, actually, is what kind of started the whole thing. Once the center pivot machine was developed, and we could walk over, you know, all kinds of terrain, different topography, and put water on different areas rather than just flat fields. Back in the early 70s, they opened up permitting into the Ogallala in western Kansas. And as it was described to me at that point in time when we were applying for our permits, the Ogallala is a giant lake, underground lake. And the individual that we were visiting with at the time we got our permit says, now this is a confined aquifer. It's a giant underground lake, and it doesn't recharge very fast, if at all. And what will happen as we pull water out of this underground lake is that the guys that are closest to the shoreline of that lake will lose their water first. It'll shrink.
Settles to the deepest spot.
It settles to the deepest spot. So the guys that are in the deep part of the lake will have water longer and at greater quantities for longer periods of time. And so that's where we're at. We've shrunk that lake, and unfortunately my farm is out there on the shore, on the edge now, and we've gone from 1,000 to 1,100 gallon a minute wells down to 150 gallon.
Oh my goodness.
Wells. And so we've quit pumping on a lot of our acres. We're only pumping on about 20% of what we used to pump, and put those into dry land and into EQIP programs and AWEP programs and a lot of the programs. So we've actually reduced our pumping just because of the economics first, and secondly just because of the quantity that was allowed, or basically that we have available to us.
So as this continues, if we don't have some corrective action, that it's just going to continue to go towards the middle.
It will continue to decline. What happened basically was the aquifer was over appropriated. Now, you know, we can look back and say, well, we should have been more diligent. We should have restricted that more. But at that point in time, I mean, with what technology we had and with what we knew about that aquifer, you know, they felt that it could be sustainable or sustained over a longer period of time. It's just that we pumped it out a lot quicker than the water resources people thought we would.
You bet.
And so, you know, in dry years, I mean, we were allotted 24 acre inches per acre, and so that allowed you to basically raise corn. And you know, at that point in time in the late 70s, early 80s, they called us to the new corn belt. And we raised corn, and we fed it to cattle, and so it was an economic thing.
You bet. Well, let's take a break. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the corrective actions that are being made to help protect our water out in western Kansas. Hi there, folks. Welcome back to Ag AM in Kansas. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson from Kansas State University, and I'm joined by Joe Drury from Ingalls, Kansas, and Joe's with Kansas Farm Bureau. He's also a farmer and rancher out in western Kansas. We've been talking about water, and you know, one of the questions that seems simple is, why don't we just move the feedlots or move agriculture from western Kansas, if there's no water, east?
Well, first off, I mean, I think there's plenty of water to sustain, you know, as far as livestock water goes. We've got plenty of water to do that. Where the catch comes is this feed availability, the growing of the corn and things like that. So as far as consumptive use of the feed yard and the cattle, we still have plenty of water for that and for those feed yards. But the other side of it is the physical aspect of the cattle industry. I mean, the packing houses have moved west. I mean,
Sure.
We have all the packing industry out there right now, and they basically followed those cattle out there. And what brought them out was, like I say, the onset of irrigation, which gave us corn, gave us feedstuffs out there, but also the climate. I mean, our humidities, if we have 30% humidity, that's high. And, normally 10 to 20% humidity, and on a fat animal, that or on a calf that's you're feeding out that's weighing 12 to 1,400 pounds, when you get high temperatures, you don't want high humidities.
Right.
And so we get 10% humidity, and that animal will sit out there in an open lot and be comfortable. And so whereas you move east, in fact, you just get as far east as Wichita even, those humidities get higher, and that just puts a lot of pressure on that animal's respiratory system, and he just can't get rid of his body heat.
Yeah, being raised in Southwest Iowa and then moving and having a veterinary practice in Amarillo, I can tell you the ability just for the night cooling
You bet.
is such a difference.
Yeah.
And moving those animals, moving those the reason why those infrastructures are out there is they're away from people.
Yep.
And they're away from humidity.
Exactly, and that's just it. I mean, and the climate itself, and dry weather. Basically, I mean, I grew up in southeast Iowa, and we used to wade those cattle through mud lots, and they'd be belly deep in mud in the spring, and just looking for a dry spot out there in the lot. And so in western Kansas, the fact that it doesn't rain is good for the feedlot industry. I mean, we just have a lot less stress days, and our gains are better, and the overall lot conditions are just better in that respect.
Yeah, and I think that as we understand and realize that cattle are raised in outdoor facilities where we don't regulate the environment, they're not probably going to be located where it's the best corn growing spots.
And we found it's certainly we're able with unit trains and with trucking, and we're able to move those feedstuffs back out that way. And of course it costs more. I mean, our corn costs more. The basis is higher out there, and but it makes a pretty good market for the corn farmers and milo farmers, and the ethanol plants are also located out there, and so we're using those byproducts also. So
absolutely. Well, thanks a million for being on the show.
You bet.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for your servant leadership to Kansas agriculture and the Kansas Farm Bureau.
My pleasure.
Thank you, folks, for watching Ag AM in Kansas. More after the break.